But what I liked about the first one is just how simple it is and just the new approach to a tactics game. Is it playing the same song now? Alright. Just about there. Stuff's almost set up. Have a good night. Thanks for stopping by. Alright. The Pontificator doesn't look perfect, but I'm not too worried about it. It's always hard to transition from one of these to the other. Okay, so let's get this started. Oh, it looks very similar? Oh yeah, that's right. Let me get the straw poll going as well. One thing I like to do is I always like to gauge what you guys thought of the game. It doesn't matter if you watch the whole thing, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, just got here, right as the credits are rolling. I'm always curious to see what other people think. So if you don't mind giving it a rating, I'd really appreciate it. And thanks for reminding me, Jago. If you don't mind taking a moment, I will start talking about the game while you guys can decide. Alright, so let's get started here. Spoiler free, yeah. People were good this time, no spoilers. We haven't really played the game before, so didn't know anything. Music rating. There's a lot of really solid tracks in this game. No big surprise because it's Squaresoft. I'd say that tracks get used a bit too much. It falls into that category of the better tracks in the game don't get used quite as often as they should, and the more like okay tracks, the ones that aren't always 100% fitting of the scenario and stuff like that, are used more often. And there are some tracks that are just kind of really repetitive, maybe a bit too repetitive, and altogether those outweigh the good, I would say. If you were to try and listen to the whole OST of this game, you'd probably enjoy maybe 40, maybe half of it or so. But the tracks that are good are good. I will say that. There's a lot of really solid tracks in this game. Just not quite enough for my liking, and just a bit too much on the end of the ones that are very repetitive. There's one particular point in the game where you have to do these mini games, and the song is basically 5 beats spammed again and again and again, and if you fall, you have to restart the minigame over and over and over again. Not to mention, you also have to do those minigames at least 3 times. And if you're playing both characters, that's at least 6 times. So get that music into your head. If it was at least good, it definitely would have been worth it, I guess I would say. But I will say I'm going to give the OST as a whole a solid 6, just because some of the tracks in the areas are really good, but there's just a bit too many tracks that I did not like in this one. Graphics for the era. Again, I'm not the best at this because I haven't played a load of PlayStation games, and it's kind of hard to compare it when there's nothing ultimately to really compare it to. But we talked about it a little bit. I felt like the sprite work and stuff like that was really well done. The character animations and stuff like that in combat and transitioning between abilities and stuff like that were really solid. But my favorite part has to be the dialogue and the characters moving between the dialogue and kind of like having interactions together. It's more lively than what you get to see in most games. You don't get to see too much expression on people's faces or any real type of emotion most of the time. They kind of have a blank stare for a majority of it, but overall it was really solid. The enemy animations and stuff like that were a little bit to be desired. There wasn't a whole lot of enemies, and they didn't do a whole lot. The attack animations of the enemies and stuff like that were a bit silly. We've seen RPGs that had worse graphics, that had more cool looking attacks and stuff like that as well. There wasn't any real like amazing areas in the game either. The actual maps and stuff like that were very small and very linear as well. I would say that the characters and the way that they looked and their animations as a whole were probably the strongest part with the graphics, and maybe some of the cutscenes that they showed in the game as well. But other than that, it didn't have a lot going for it, especially with the maps and stuff like I talked about. The dungeon layouts, the way they looked and everything, it was basically like one palette and maybe just a couple lines used constantly, and then extending that out for like 20-30 minutes, but it basically looks like the same thing with different enemies and stuff like that thrown in different areas. So I guess I will give that a 6 as well. And that's really the characters pushing that up quite a bit. Story rating. It was just a goofy story. Mint's story is about world domination and the fact that she basically wants to get at back at her sister and her father for taking her from being princess and her being next in the throne and kicking her out of her country. It's kind of her just like getting revenge, but she's a little too into it to the point of it being a little goofy. That's how her interactions go constantly, and every one of the dialogues that she has is basically she's not giving up on world domination. But when you play through her story, she actually starts to grow a little bit and kind of like absorb the characters that are around her and appreciates them and things like that. She still has the goal in her mind, but she thinks of having those people as her henchmen and things like that as well. It's a little bit charming and pretty endearing, and she had a lot of really goofy situations overall that are going to probably be the most memorable thing for me about this game. And she drop kicks the crap out of stuff. Rue's story was more serious, and I actually feel like you got to see a better light of Rue's story from Mint. I just feel like he didn't really want to do anything wrong. He saw what he was doing was potentially wrong and going to cause people problems, but he still had a goal. And we get to see a little bit more of that in his story as to what his goal was. But I just feel like it was a little bit better portrayed in Mint's story when we didn't know everything that was going on. If they would have taken a little bit more bits out of that and put it into his story and just not change things because there was no real reason to change things, I feel, I would have appreciated it a little bit more. But again, that's my opinion. I was definitely interested in the fact that I expected to play through as a character, and maybe that's because I've seen this in games before, play as one character and then get to see the other perspective from another character's light and kind of have an idea of what's going on. But this game chose to kind of treat it like it was a hybrid. Sometimes it treated it like you were the main protagonist and the other character was just there and not doing a whole lot, but then they were, and they tied it back into the old story. But other times they completely changed it, like what you did with one character never happened. And it was a little jarring in some places because I feel like it changes a character dynamic here and there from what you expect. So depending on which character you play first and go and do the separate storyline, you might be surprised with how they deal with an interaction at a different point. And I think I would have appreciated that a little bit more if they just didn't mess with it so much. If they just kind of kept it linear and gave you another side of the story from a different person's perspective. But again, my opinion. But there's just not a whole lot going on with the story. We're trying to revive somebody in one story. We're trying to get world domination in another. And we're chasing after a relic the entire game. And not really doing anything of much significance. I'm going to go ahead and give the story a 5. Alright, the mechanics. This one's a rough one because on paper, the mechanics and stuff of the game seem sound. You have one character that can melee and do magic, and they can switch between their forms of magic. And depending on what abilities you use and which type of casting you use for the caster, they do different types of spells. But it's very clunky. If you want to cast a spell in this game, you have a long pause. And the way that the enemies work is if they're close to you, they're going to hit you and they can chain attack you. So there's some instances where you just can't get spells off unless you're casting it super far away and hope the enemy just runs close to you. And you can imagine how that makes it difficult to hit bosses with them sometimes. Unless you would definitely know all the mechanics about the game, just doing a casual playthrough of this game, if you're going to try to use spells and stuff, you're going to struggle. You're better off almost relying on melees because it's safer, it allows you to have more mobility of your character, and does around the same amount of damage. You can definitely do more damage with magic. Also, the way MP works is you have to land physical attacks to gain your MP back. So, again, you can realize how I focused more on using physical attacks over spells. Plus, it was a little bit of a clunky environment to switch between what spells you wanted to use, and the game used that as a puzzle element to get through different areas, like lighting fires or unlighting fires or putting wind on a fire. Like, there was lots of fire puzzles. Doc, thank you for the 10 bits, man. And then with Rue, you had the ability to turn into enemies that you killed. And that was interesting, but the puzzles for him were annoying because you could only carry so many transformations. So you would have to go back to different areas to kill an enemy to get their transformation just to solve a puzzle at one point. And there was very little direction in what you had to do sometimes with that. But other than that, he was almost stronger than the actual monster forms that he had. So you were only really switching for puzzles or to get around the environment a lot quicker. But the biggest flaw with this game is that it's a game that's action and you want to be in there and hitting things and running around and stuff like that. But the way the targeting system in this game works is incredibly frustrating. When you're near a target, and I can't even figure out how the game decides what target. Let's say you're surrounded by 3 targets. The game will pick one target and lock onto that target and make your character float towards that target. It doesn't matter if you're really far away, if you're right next to something and want to hit that. If it's targeting something else and there's no visual representation of what you're targeting, your character goes towards that. There's a few fights in the game where when that happens, it makes it such a frustrating fight. There's a fight where a character's running around the map with a whole bunch of things that are on it, and if you hit those things, they explode. And this character is invulnerable about 90% of the time between his attacks, so you have very few openings to actually get in and hit him. So you can imagine what it's like to be trying to avoid these things that are all around you, get close enough to hit him, and have so much limited amount of time to actually be able to hit him as well. So I would say mechanically, I feel like this game could have done something that, if it could have done a targeting system like Zelda, and I hate to really compare it to Ocarina of Time, but I feel like that's what games like this need in some way, shape, or form. You need some type of visual representation of what the character is looking at or attacking. If you don't have that, you're flailing around. And the worst part about it is if you're not completely focused on a character and it has you aiming at a character that you're not really trying to go for, you roll off of them. So you don't hit them then. You just get very close to them and your swing will miss. And then you get chain attacked and stuff like that. So it was pretty frustrating. I found the best way to solve that was to jump in the air and do an attack, because if I did that, 9 times out of 10, that attack would go directly straight in whichever way that I was pointing. So I could aim my attacks, whereas other ones I couldn't. But that also required me to jump before doing that. And we also talk mechanics in the sense of story elements as well. The game just kind of progressed, go find point A, go through dungeon, find item B, and go back, rinse and repeat. There was nothing super exciting about it, and the puzzles weren't really difficult. They just kind of used the elements of the game overall. I guess I'll say the mechanics were probably the weakest part of the game for me, just because of how frustrating the combat got. Oh, and the platforming. I can't forget to talk about the platforming. There is absolutely no way to see the depth of platforms in this game. You cannot quite tell how far away they are from you and how far away you can jump at any point in time without trial and error, and then seeing like, okay, I can make it this far, but some of the angles and stuff like that you're at, you can't tell. You almost have to jump, and if you see your shadow over the platform, you made it. Other ones, nope. So I'm gonna go ahead and give the mechanics a 4. I did really start out liking the game, but the more that I played it mechanically, it just started to become more and more frustrating. I think if I would have rated this game immediately after playing through Mint's playthrough, I would have given it a little bit higher. But since I was playing a character that was more based around physical attacks the second time around, it really, really shined how lousy the mechanics really feel. You might say it's seeming generous. So, grinding rating. There's only one point in the game that I grinded, and I don't think you need to. I grinded because required you to use a fire spell to get through these 3 ice blocks, and the ice blocks took forever to melt. Basically, it was an MP check. You had to have a certain amount of MP to get past them. Other than that, I didn't really grind it all in the game. So I would say that if you're trying to do everything you can do in the game, you're probably going to have to grind a little bit for money and things like that. But overall, you can definitely beat it without it. I'll go ahead and give it a solid 8 in that regard. Alright, so let's see what you guys rated it here. Let me do some math quick. Yeah, it's definitely satisfying to do, but it doesn't really yield anything interesting, and it's not worth the amount of time that you put into it. It's also not worth the backtracking to get back there later when you would have the MP to do it otherwise. Let's see. Bear with me, I'm trying to do some math. Alright, how many people did we have vote here? 18, wow. Thank you guys. It looks like you guys gave it a 6.8, so we'll go ahead and round that up to a 7. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I'm kind of on the... I think it's a solid 6 for me. I feel like I could recommend this game to people that like action-oriented games and want to play something pretty silly. I would definitely recommend Mint's playthrough over Rue's. I feel like Rue has a little bit more of a serious story and people might attach to that a little bit more, dealing with the loss of someone and trying to prevent that loss. But I feel like Mint's was just a little bit more fun, and she adds a bit more to it, and I liked her perspective of Rue's story as well. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6, guys. Replay value, will I replay it? No, I won't. And I think we got everything out of the game. I'm glad that I finally played it. I've had it for a very long time. It was worth a playthrough, but I think that I'm good with this one. So, no, I will not replay it. Alright, it is the 20th of November. And it took us 15 hours, 53 minutes, and 20 seconds to finish the game. Alright. That means you guys know what time it is now, for those of you that have been here before. It is raffle time. You know, I thought about giving the music a higher rating, but when I listened to the OST today, I realized that there was definitely a lot of tracks in the game that I'm not a fan of. I was between a 6.5 and a 7, and I don't really round up, so I gave it a 6 over a 7. But I don't disagree with you that there are definitely some good tracks in this, and I hope my rating of it doesn't define the OST for you. That's not what I'm trying to do. For those of you that aren't sure of what's going on right now, it's raffle time. All you have to do is type in the word raffle. If you do, it enters you in the chance to win. If you win, you get to pick the next game that I play. It's as simple as that. You just type in the word raffle. And whoever wins gets to look at the list and pick a game that I have not beaten already for the tour. But yeah, I mean, when I really think about it, I will say the OST is definitely between a solid 6.5 and a 7 for me. And it could definitely go for a 7 as well. Because the tracks that I do like, I really do like. Alright. So the only stipulation to let you guys know about, if Nightbot wins the raffle, what I will do is I will come up with a list of 5 games, and all of you get to vote, and whatever the highest game is, that's the one that I play. We added that in as kind of a way for me to get in some games that I want to potentially play. So far, it's happened once in, the 67 games that we've played. That's quite a bit of games without it. And the game that got picked was Octopath Traveler for that. So, well, perfect timing, BGG. Alright, I think you guys waited long enough, and I think I've been streaming for a while. So... good luck, everybody! 3, 2, 1! Wow! Did it happen? You literally won on the game that you just picked. I don't think this has happened before, where the person that picked the game that we were on won. Let me know if you're still here, Doc. This just happened to Colthor too? What do I get for criticize? I didn't criticize anything. Are you talking about me? Or are you talking to chat? Yeah, I would definitely say it's a average game, BGG. Saga Frontier 2. First time played? Yes, it is my first time played. I'm not bullying the game. I'm just being honest with how I felt about it. Again, I tried to be as objective as possible, but let's be honest, guys. You're always going to be subjective with things. There's just no getting around it. You sure you're not thinking of Unlimited Saga? You've only heard bad things about Saga Frontier 2. Oh, well, thanks again for that raid, Derek. I really appreciate it, and you have a good night, good sir. Alright, I know literally nothing about Saga Frontier 2. The only thing that I know is that we've beaten the first one. But I do own the game, so that's good, I guess. There's one more thing that we do, though, guys. Anytime that we finish a game, we try to send a solid raid in someone's direction. And we always try to think of something from the game that we just beat. Yeah, PS2 is definitely up and running, man. Works like a charm. Relic seems like a good one. Anybody can think of anything else? Pumpkins would be a good one, too. I definitely had some unique experiences in this game, that's for sure. There's no denying that. But between my willingness to replay the game... Alright, we'll go ahead and mix the two. Let's go with Relic Pumpkins, guys. And you can put any type of emotes you want in it as well. Stars are a good emote to spam with it. Let's see. Who do we want to raid here? Well, we obviously can't host GGG anymore. You know what? Let's go ahead and give Solomon a raid. I'm not sure how he feels about raids, but I guess we're about to figure it out. Go ahead and spam your Relic Pumpkins, guys, with any emotes that you like. Good night, Colthor. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. Go ahead and take over his chat for a bit, guys. Show him some love. Show him some support. Wish him some luck on his runs. And I will see you guys tomorrow for probably some Earthbound. Alright, have a good night. See you then.